What's going on, guys? It's your boy John the Liquidator coming back with another video. I'm currently out of the studio. I will be on the road for the next coming days. But guys, we have to talk about the topic at hand. That is Cleveland Brown media taking offense to Coach Prime not saying nothing to him. Now, when I made the video breaking the story yesterday, yes, the story was broke right here on John Liquidator 2.0 that Coach Prime was even up there. I told you, I don't see him talking to no.
Coach Prime walked into that stadium yesterday, and by the time he left, half the internet was furious about a man who did nothing but watch his son play football. That's the story right now. Not a stat line, not a depth chart, a father in the stands, and grown reporters acting like he committed a crime. Shedeur Sanders didn't ask for this. He never does. But somehow, every single time something happens around him, the noise gets louder than the football itself. Let's talk about what actually happened in Cleveland this week, and why it says more about the people criticizing Shedeur than it does about Shedeur himself. It started with a visit. Deion Sanders showed up at Brown's training camp to watch his son practice. That's it. That's the entire event. A father watching his kid live out a dream that started in a backyard in Texas years before anyone in Cleveland ever heard the name Shedeur Sanders. But in this league, nothing stays simple, especially not when it involves the Sanders name. Within hours, Cleveland media was buzzing, not about the offense, not about the quarterback battle, but about the fact that Coach Prime didn't stop to give them interviews. He shook hands, he smiled, he stood in the stands like any other parent would, and then he left without feeding the media machine a single soundbite. That's what set people off. Think about that for a second. A man drove hours, cleared his schedule during one of the most demanding stretches of his own coaching season at Colorado, just to watch his son throw routes after practice. And the story that came out of it wasn't about the bond between a father and his son. It was about which reporters felt snubbed. That tells you everything about the environment Shedeur has been playing in since the moment he stepped into that building. Now here's where it gets interesting, because Coach Prime didn't hide from the moment. He addressed it directly, and what he said cut through all the noise in a way only he can. He talked about getting a text from Shedeur with the practice schedule attached. No explanation needed, just a schedule, sent from a son to a father. And Prime said something that stuck with a lot of people watching that clip. He said last year he didn't get that text. This year he did. Sit with that for a second. That's not a headline about football. That's a quiet signal about where Shedeur's head is right now. A young quarterback fighting for a starting job, dealing with a fifth-round draft slide that still follows him everywhere he goes, dealing with a media market that scrutinizes every throw, every interview, every facial expression. And somewhere in the middle of all that pressure, he still made time to invite his father to come watch him work. That's not something you fake. That's not a storyline built for cameras. That's a kid who wanted his dad there.
No reporters at all. Only reporter I maybe see him talk to is Garrett Bush. And it looked like Garrett Bush ain't even getting no motion. Now, Coach Prime did make it his thing to actually tell the world why he went up to Cleveland. He stated that he went to go watch Shedeur play. He really didn't go up there to meet Todd Monken. He went up there as a father and as a parent to see his son play football based on his schedule. Now, we do know Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes, who I am hearing.
But instead of that being the story became about optics, about whether it was appropriate for Prime to be there at all, about whether it created a distraction. A distraction from what, exactly? From reporters not getting their 15 minutes? This is the same pattern we've seen since day one with Shedeur. Every storyline gets twisted into something bigger than it actually is. Every quiet moment becomes a controversy. And every time it happens, you have to ask yourself, is this about football or is this about clicks? Because right now in Cleveland, the appetite for content off Shedeur's name is enormous. Every angle gets covered, every reaction gets dissected, and when the actual story doesn't provide enough drama on its own, some people manufacture it. That's exactly what happened this week. Now let's talk about the man at the center of it all, because Deion Sanders isn't just a famous name attached to a rookie quarterback. He's one of the most influential figures the sport has ever seen, and the way he carried himself at that practice tells you why. People who were actually there described something different than what got picked up online. They said Prime sat quietly in the stands. He didn't walk the sideline. He didn't insert himself into coaching decisions. He didn't hover around Todd Monken or try to influence anything happening on that field. He was just a dad, watching, the same way any parent watches their kid compete. And when practice ended, he did what most parents do. He waited until his son was done, walked down, gave him a hug, and left. That's the whole story. But because it's Deion Sanders, because of everything he represents in this sport, the moment got blown into something it never was.
People forget that Prime built his entire legacy on being polarizing. 30 years ago, he was doing things on a football field that nobody had seen before. Flamboyant, confident, backing up every word with performance. He changed the way defensive backs played the position. He changed the way athletes carried themselves. And along the way, he made enemies out of people who couldn't stand watching someone be that good and that unapologetic about it. Now that same energy follows his son. Except Shedeur isn't even doing the things his father did to draw criticism. He's not talking trash on the field. He's not dancing into end zones. He's just trying to win a starting job in a city that's been starving for stability at quarterback for longer than most fans want to admit. And still, the noise finds him. Let's slow down for a second, because there's a piece of this that gets skipped over too fast. Think about what it actually means to be Deion Sanders in that stadium. He's not just a dad. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a college head coach in the middle of his own demanding season at Colorado, where expectations are climbing every single week. He's a national figure who can't walk into any building without being the center of attention, whether he wants to be or not. And yet, according to people who are actually on that field, he made a conscious decision to disappear into the background. He didn't work the room. He didn't play to the cameras. For a man who built part of his legacy on being larger than life, choosing to sit quietly in the stands and just be a father says something. It says the moment wasn't about him, and he knew it.
Look, when it comes to the Buffs, I'm hearing they're going to have 8 to 9 plus wins. Now, remember where y'all heard that first. Because everybody else talking about 8 to 9 plus wins for the Colorado Buffaloes. I'm telling you right now, what I know definitively. So Coach Prime got a progression of his own to set forth up there in Colorado. So his schedule might not work as well for him to go to even Cleveland games this year.
That's a level of restraint people don't give him credit for. Because the narrative already written about Deion Sanders is the flashy one, the loud one, the one that gets clicks. Nobody wants to publish the version where he sat still for 2 hours just to watch his son run routes. There's also something worth pointing out about the other people who were on that field that day. According to those in attendance, it wasn't just Deion Sanders drawing attention. There were college coaches there, retired NFL coaches, even a few celebrities mixed into the crowd. Camp had turned into an event, a magnet for attention, regardless of who showed up. But somehow, only one man's presence became a national controversy. That alone tells you something about how differently Shedeur and his family get treated compared to everyone else walking through that building. Let's talk about where this leaves Shedeur heading into camp, because underneath all the outside drama, there's a real competition happening, a real quarterback battle between him and Deshaun Watson, a veteran carrying the weight of a massive contract and years of unmet expectations in Cleveland. Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator brought in to fix this offense, has made it clear he's not interested in outside distractions. People close to the program say Monken doesn't care about the cameras, doesn't care about the social media attention, doesn't care who Shedeur's father is or how many people are watching every practice rep. His approach is simple. When it's time to work, you work. Everything else is noise. That mentality matters because it's exactly what Shedeur needs right now, a coach who evaluates him on tape, not headlines. A coach who sees a young quarterback learning a new system, building chemistry with new weapons, and pushing for reps in a room that includes proven talent like Jerry Jeudy, along with young playmakers like Isaiah Bond and Denzel Boston, all trying to find their identity in this offense together. Add in a tight end like Harold Fannin Jr., a rookie trying to carve out his own role in that same room, and you start to see just how much is actually happening on that practice field that has nothing to do with who's sitting in the stands. And that's the part that gets lost in every controversy surrounding Shedeur, the actual football, the growth, the process. Because make no mistake, this competition is real. Watson isn't just going to hand over the job. He's a former franchise quarterback with playoff experience, and the organization has invested heavily in him. That creates pressure from both directions, pressure for Shedeur to prove he belongs at this level, and pressure for the Browns front office, led by Andrew Berry, to justify years of decisions that haven't panned out the way they hoped. Shedeur is stepping into all of that, a locker room with mixed expectations, a city desperate for a winner, a media market that treats every practice rep like breaking news. And somehow, through all of it, the people who've actually been around him keep saying the same thing. He's not rattled.
Colorado Buffalo season is going to be very much in high demand. That's not saying every season isn't, but I just feel like this year is a little bit more focused on the Buffs. But with all that being said, man, we have to talk about Coach Prime giving it his reasoning as to why he decided to go see his son, Shedeur Sanders. Now, the Cleveland Brown media, like I stated to you guys, is definitely pissed off about this, how Coach Prime didn't say nothing to him.
That's where guys like Tyvis Powell come in. Powell has been vocal about believing in what Shedeur brings to this locker room, not just as a talent, but as a personality who fits the identity the Browns are trying to build. It's not blind support either. It's coming from someone who's actually been in those rooms, actually seen how Shedeur carries himself with teammates, actually watched how he responds under pressure when the cameras aren't rolling. That kind of internal belief matters more than any outside narrative because it tells you what's really happening behind closed doors, away from the noise, away from the reporters chasing quotes in a media tent. And that contrast, the outside narrative versus the internal reality, is the story that keeps repeating itself with Shedeur Sanders. On one side, you have endless scrutiny, comparisons to his draft slide, questions about whether he can handle the pressure of leading an NFL franchise. On the other side, you have teammates, coaches, and people close to the program consistently saying the same thing. He works, he listens, he's locked in. So which version is true? Maybe both. Maybe that's the point. Shedeur Sanders is polarizing, not because of who his father is, but because of what he represents. A young quarterback who came into the league already confident, already outspoken, already unwilling to shrink himself to fit anyone else's comfort level. That kind of presence draws criticism in this sport. It always has. His father is proof of that. And that's exactly why moments like this week matter more than they seem to on the surface. Because every time something small gets turned into a controversy, it's another test, another chance for Shedeur to either crack under the noise or let it roll off him and keep working. So far, every account from inside that building points to the same conclusion. He's choosing this second option. Let's talk about the bigger picture for a second, because this isn't happening in a vacuum. Shedeur walked into this league already carrying a story most rookies never have to deal with. A fifth-round draft slide that shocked people around the entire football world. Team after team passing on him for reasons that ranged from character concerns nobody could fully explain to simple doubt about whether his game would translate at the next level. That kind of fall changes a person. It would be easy for a young player in that position to come into a new city angry, defensive, guarded. Instead, by almost every account coming out of Berea, Shedeur has done the opposite. He's shown up early. He's stayed late. He's built relationships in that receiver room with veterans like Jerry Jeudy who've seen every type of quarterback come through a locker room, and with young guys like Isaiah Bond and Denzel Boston who are fighting for their own roles this camp. Even veterans like Joe Hayden, who've watched this organization cycle through quarterbacks for years, have talked about the kind of presence Shedeur carries in the building. Not loud for the sake of being loud, confident, but grounded. And that's the piece that keeps getting buried under headlines about draft slides and media snubs and controversial visits. The actual human being at the center of this story is quietly doing the work every single day in a building that hasn't given a young quarterback an easy path in a long time. Now think about what comes next, because this story doesn't end with one practice or one visit from his father. Camp is only getting started. Every single day between now and the first preseason snap is going to be measured, analyzed, picked apart by a fan base and a media market that has waited years for a quarterback worth believing in. Every incompletion will be a headline. Every touchdown will be a statement. Every rep against Watson's group will be framed as evidence in a debate that's already dividing the fan base down the middle.
He didn't speak to reporters. Now, he did shake everybody's hand and, simple conversation, but he didn't want to give no interviews. He didn't want to answer no questions. And for them to even feel a type of way about that is crazy work. Him coming just as a father, bro, I don't know. It just show you the nature of the drama in Cleveland, bro, because they want these damn clicks so bad, bro, off his son's name. Is crazy work. Now,
That's the reality Shedeur is stepping into, and it's not going away just because one visit from his dad turned into an overblown story this week. If anything, it's a preview of what's coming. Every personal moment, every family appearance, every quiet gesture is going to be scrutinized the same way. That's the cost of being who he is, carrying the name he carries, walking into a city this hungry for a winner. But here's what should give people confidence heading into the next few weeks. If a story this small, a father simply watching his son practice, can dominate headlines for days, imagine what happens when Shedeur starts stacking real football moments. Imagine the reaction when he starts making winning throws in real preseason snaps, when he starts building chemistry with Jeudy and Bond and Boston in ways that show up on tape instead of just in practice reports. The same media cycle that turned this into a controversy is going to turn every genuine success into an even bigger story.
That's the double-edged sword of this level of attention. It cuts both ways. And if Shedeur keeps handling the noise the way he has so far, calm, focused, letting the people closest to him speak for him instead of chasing headlines himself, that same spotlight is going to eventually work in his favor. If you've been following this story since the draft slide, since the doubts, since every headline questioning whether he belonged in this league, you already know how deep this runs. This isn't just about one practice or one visit from his father. This is about a young quarterback trying to build something real in a city that hasn't had stability at that position in years. If this story means something to you, if you've been riding with Shedeur through every twist since the draft, make sure you're subscribed, because this camp battle is only getting started, and there's a lot more coming before the season even kicks off. Because here's what nobody's talking about enough. Shedeur isn't just fighting for reps. He's fighting to change a narrative that's followed him since April. He's fighting to prove that everything people doubted about his fall in the draft was wrong. And every rep, every practice, every quiet moment with his family in the stands is part of that larger story. Deion Sanders showing up wasn't a distraction. It was a reminder of where Shedeur came from, who believed in him before the league did, and why he plays with the confidence he plays with. Think back to where this all started. Long before Cleveland, long before the draft, before any of this noise existed, there was a kid throwing routes with his father on fields nobody was filming. Long nights, early mornings, the kind of relationship that gets built through repetition, not headlines. That's the version of the story the cameras never captured, and it's the version that actually explains everything happening right now. Because when the cameras stop rolling, when the media tents empty out, when the headlines move on to the next controversy, what's left is a father and a son, and a kid who sent his dad a text with a schedule attached because deep down, some part of him needed him there. That's not weakness. That's not distraction. That's the foundation this entire story is built on. And as training camp rolls forward, as the quarterback competition intensifies, as every practice rep gets picked apart by people looking for the next headline, that foundation is exactly what's going to carry Shedeur Sanders through it. Not the noise, not the criticism, not the manufactured controversies about who talked to which reporter. Just the work, just the belief from the people who actually know him, and just a kid from Texas, still fighting to prove every doubter wrong, one practice at a time. Because in the end, that's what this entire story keeps coming back to. Not the debates, not the reporters, not the outrage cycles that burn hot for a day and disappear the next. Just a young man who's been doubted his whole career, standing in front of the biggest opportunity of his life and refusing to let any of it shake him. The draft slide didn't stop him, the comparisons haven't stopped him, and a father sitting quietly in the stands certainly isn't going to stop him either. If anything, it's exactly what he needed.